He's a man that makes stuff look easy. An MS fighter, a freelance rider. He has amazing general knowledge. He lived and breathed the skate culture. From a skater to a creator, the sneaker collection, the vinyl collection. Spent hours in Warren's Records Paradise, in Dandenong Dixon Recycle, OB's in Paran, and Alley Tunes in Hawthorne. A man who truly adores his parents. A man who puts so many first. A pure, kind heart. Give it up for Darren Winter. Daz, welcome to the show.
That was a sensational introduction. I'm taking a few seconds to process it. That was great. Thank you for having me, Al. It's lovely to be here.
I've got to say this, Daz. I mentioned this as soon as I walked in the doors. You and I, we've done a lot of things through really good radio and all that sort of stuff. This is the first time we have met face to face.
This is true. This is true. You're bigger than I expected, to be perfectly honest. I saw you a foot shorter.
Oh, wow. I have goosebumps in here. I'm in your presence, and there's so many reasons why, for me, that this is just, I've been looking forward to this. With every other interview that I've done, I've had a few show notes, a few questions I want to ask. Just knowing you, I just want to sit here and just have a conversation with you.
It's perfectly cool, Al. Ask me anything you want. Nothing is off limits. I'll give you a brief history of me. From 0 to 5, I remember nothing. From 5 to 10, I liked cartoons. From 10 to 15, I liked animals. From 15 to 20, I was a skateboarder. From 20 to 25, I was a DJ. From 25 to 30, I was a student. From 30 to 35, I was a copywriter. From 35 to 40, I was a successful copywriter. And then at 40, everything sort of went pear-shaped. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And from 40 to 45 was just sort of coming to terms with that diagnosis. And 45 to 50, I'm just trying to live my best life as best I can.
And wow, that is in a snapshot.
That is a snapshot.
And not just 50 by a lot, 50 by one day.
One day.
One day. You mentioned earlier about coming to terms with 50.
Yes. I'm not happy with it. I'm not happy with ages with a 0 at the end. As I discussed with you, 48, good. 42, good. I like those ages, 2s and 8s. 0 feels like it's such a completion of a decade.
Yeah.
Like it's hard to sort of get your head around sometimes.
The thing that really got me with you was really good radio, daily dollop of Daz. You know, Troy Benjamin set up this opportunity for people to just be a part of something during lockdown, and we got to hear your brilliance. We got to hear your mind. We got to hear how smart you are. And I always wanted to do this thing of Google versus Daz.
Oh, no. Google's going to win. Google's going to win.
But will Google tell us the right answer?
Well, I'll probably tell my own unique answer. Let's be perfectly honest.
Let me rephrase that. Who would we believe most, Google or Daz? I'd go with Daz every time.
I can be pretty persuasive. I studied advertising.
In the intro, we went from skater to creator. Your professional career, talk through what that was, how it came about.
I'm a copywriter in the advertising industry. I lived a life I gallivanted around and did various horrible things. And then I eventually went back to study at like 26 and I studied advertising. And then I immediately entered into the advertising field. And that's the only place I've ever worked. Well, except for DJing and all that sort of jazz. But that has been my main profession.
Why?
I really enjoy it. I was always happy to write, and I was always a good writer. I always did it, even from primary school. I wrote stories and did all things like that. And so it was a natural fit. And when I studied at RMIT TAFE, I had a real visionary teacher who sort of taught me that all you really had to be was be a smart ass and be pretty quick with it. And you could be a successful copywriter. And to a large part, that's sort of true.
Where was his teacher when I needed a career?
It was brilliant. It was brilliant.
How good is that? So at that stage when you're like, I can use my wit.
Yes.
And I can be sharp. And
yes.
I can...
And they were the only skills I had, Al.
The best skills.
Yeah.
The best skills.
And it was all because I couldn't fight. I had to learn to be a smart ass and be quick with my wit. And it was just to get me out of fisticuffs and to avoid those situations.
At what stage did you realise that you had wit and that you were sharp? And I probably would have been really interested to be the fly on the wall in year 10 watching a Darren Winter at his peak.
Look, year 10, some goth dude at CBC, which was the school I went to, said something about me being really quick with a comeback. And it was the first time anyone ever complimented me on that sort of skill, because it wasn't a skill back then. And I took it to heart and I cultivated it.
Wow. Wow.
And I nurtured it as much as I could.
At what stage did you think, and you cultivate it, you nurture it, and it's that part of being a teenager, of building your own, I guess, brand or who you are?
Yes.
At what stage do you go, I'm going to turn this into a career?
Well, it's an odd story because I was living the life of Riley. I wasn't doing good things. My parents were getting unhappy with me. And my dad called me in and he had the VTAC guide. And he said, no, you're doing bad things. You've got to stop. You've got to straighten up. You've got to get a career. I bought the VTAC guide and I was a bratty little 19, 20-year-old, I don't know. I said, fine, flipped open the VTAC guide and it opened to advertising.
Wow.
And I said, fine, I'm going to do that.
Wow.
And that's how my career started.
Wow.
Through a random sort of flick of the VTAC guide.
Random or on purpose? Like random or...
Completely random. I often wonder, what if I'd hit medicine, something I could not have done? Like, would I have committed to that? Or would I have gone, I'm going to flick it again?
Would you put your finger on it, read it, and then just sort of move your finger up or down or flick the page over?
You know, I couldn't even think that fast. I just wanted to sort of get my own back by choosing something at random.
You're choosing that something at random, but at some stage it clicks with you, right?
Oh, straight away.
Yeah.
Straight away. In uni, I knew that I had a natural sort of aptitude for it and I was good at it. And with the peers, with the people I was studying for, I seemed to get it quicker than they did.
Yeah.
And also probably because I was a bit older when I went to uni, because I was 26 or something like that and they were all young, I was a bit more confident with all that. So I think that all helped.
You've got this wit, but you've got to have creativity with it as well. You can't you just can't have wit. So going through uni, you're sitting there watching people study, and there's some that are being really academic about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's some that are not academic about it at all, but get to the point of what it is.
Yeah, I think there came a time because a lot of people did really well in the theory and the art classes and all that sort of jazz, but I never really had much interest in that. I just wanted to do something really creative, something that my parents would be proud of, something that I could brag to my friends about. So that was all I really aimed for.
And you were pretty good at it.
Yeah, for a time.
Yeah.
For a time.
Name some of the big stuff that you did, if you can. What's some of the stuff, or we should say, some of the stuff that you were really proud of, some of the product that you really put out there that you're proud of?
Well, I did all the ads for Virgin Blue for a few years. It was one of my first jobs at an agency in St Kilda. So I did hundreds of ads for Virgin Blue. I did TV ads, I did big billboards, and Virgin Blue, the nature of it, you could sort of push the envelope because Richard Branson was a sort of bit of a tearaway.
Yeah.
And so we got to have a lot of fun with that. We did incredible things. We had the biggest billboards in Australia. We had. Like, this was in my first couple of years in advertising, so I thought, oh, my life is going to be glorious from now on.
This is the benchmark, and this is where it starts.
I just peaked really early. Like, I did shoots in New York in my first 2 years in advertising, and then everything went from New York to New South Wales. Like, I the real... Yeah.
You've read on your thing, you've seen the end, you're like, yeah, I'm going straight to international, and they're like, sorry, domestic flight to New South Wales.
We're going to Tasmania this week.
So you land in New York, right?
Yeah.
You're living the dream, I guess.
It was the dream because I was fully into hip hop and suddenly, and we got to New York because we won a pitch on Emirates, the international airline, and because of that, they sent it to New York, my art director and I and the boss and a TV producer, and it was the best thing ever because we got to New York, we had to shoot 4 photos, $500,000 shoot, 4 photos. It was just ridiculous back then. And when we were in New York, we got snowed in. So this 4-day trip got turned into a 14-day trip. Wow. And we were just going to see Blue Man Group on Broadway and just living on the company dime. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
But that never happened again.
Yeah.
But you can tick the box and say
I can tick the box. I had a junket.
Yeah, wow.
I had it too early, though. I had it too early.
You want it towards the mid to back end of
Yes,
your career.
yes.
Because now you set the benchmark. You know, you get there, you're in New York, you're working this high level marking, you're taking these 4 photos.
Yeah.
You are deep into your hip hop and you're in New York. Let's dial into the hip hop because I'm sitting here and I goosebumps, and all the way here because of Daily Double Daz and really good radio. That picture in the background there, the Beat Street picture, showed up. Now, having grown up in the 80s and loved the breakdance scene, Beat Street was the anchor. It was the core, I'd say, commercial component in our house. That was if you do breakdance, it's the Beat Street. And then if you want to get into it a little bit more commercial, then it's Electric Boogaloo and all that sort of stuff.
Turbo and Ozone.
100%.
Yeah.
But Beat Street was like that. That's the real deal stuff. So I see this poster and I'm on my way here today and I'm pressing play and repeat on Beat Street Breakdown. And because unfortunately commercial music, I don't have the money that we can play it here right now. But
I'm sure we could recite the lyrics between us.
Beat Street,
We're not
the
gonna
king
do
of the
that.
beat. Yeah. Rocking and cheap from across the street. Beat
Exactly.
Street, the lesson too. You can't let the street beat you. That wasn't a cough. That should have been a.
I'm not going to stop him. I'm going to let him keep going until he runs out of puff.
Exactly. Let's talk through that because
Well, New York was amazing because at the time, like I was a hip hop DJ, I was the sub-editor of this magazine, a hip hop magazine, and I had a radio show. So I was
Wow.
completely immersed in it, and I was doing advertising.
so you're all things hip hop.
I was all things at that stage.
Yes.
Yes. No, 80%. The other 20% was advertising because I was moving from one to the other.
Yeah.
While I did the 5-year periods before, they always overlap, you know.
Yeah.
And so, we flew to New York, the home of hip hop. Very little to do, so we went to nightclubs and just wandered around and just soaked up the atmosphere, and it was incredible. I got to see all the graffiti, and I got to meet people and all that, and it was fantastic.
Let's go to the show, the radio show.
The radio show.
What did you have? What did you do?
Well, when I was at uni, my good friend started a hip-hop magazine called Out for Fame, which became a magazine called Acclaim that's still around.
Yes.
But he started that when we were studying advertising at RMIT.
Oh wow.
And so I became the sub-editor of that magazine. And he also had a radio show because then I became the co-anchor with another fellow. So we had this radio show on Wednesdays on Sin FM, SRA, the student radio out of RMIT, and it was a ball. We had a great time. And like at the time when I had the radio show, I was mostly studying and sort of transitioning to another period in my life. So it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah.
It was all I wanted to do, and it was great.
Let's talk about the clothes because you can't just be hip hop by interest. You got to be hip hop by culture.
Well, as far as clothes go, only shoes.
Yeah.
Because I was a skateboarder. I needed loose pants and stuff like that. I never got into Coogee and all the stuff that the American hip-hop kids wear. I never really got into that, but I got into my shoes heavily. And so I wrote, for the magazine, I wrote a sneaker column, and they would send me shoes every couple of months, and I would review them for this magazine. So half the shoes you see here are still remnants from that period of my life, which was just glorious. Imagine being into something and then being paid to review it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a dream.
I mean, you look at today's age, and everybody's reviewing everything. But back then, when you're being sent this equipment,
I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. And you have a phenomenal shoe collection.
I do.
You have a phenomenal.
I do.
I'm assuming that we can't be in there to shoot this, but what really interests me is me growing up with hip hop. It was around only brown people listen to hip hop. That was it. There was no Caucasian. There was no any of this. So then I start seeing this other element of going, oh, you like hip hop too?
Well, because of the graffiti that we have in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Graffiti sort of went hand in hand with hip hop, and the skateboarding culture sort of segued into that at the same time. Because half of the skateboarders became graffiti writers, and they were all heavily influenced by hip hop.
What year, at what age do you remember? Let's talk about the Beat Street sign, the Beat Street drawing. What the graphic, what is it? Talk me through why it's here.
Well, it's here because Beach Street came out, I think, in 83 or 84,
Yeah.
and I saw it at the Brighton Bay Twin with my friends.
Wow.
And that influenced my life because it had graffiti, it
Yeah.
had breakdancing, it had street culture, it had cool fashion. So it influenced my life. And when I got this house, say 12 years ago, there was this space, and I thought, I'm gonna put a Beach Street mural up. And so I had a projector that I'd liberated from work. So I projected this big street thing and painted over it. And it's been sitting there to this day. To be honest, it's 12 years old now. I'm thinking it needs to be refreshed.
Oh, I was going to say, I thought you were going to say it needs to go. It definitely doesn't need to go because I see these sliding doors moment, where for me, I only got to watch Beat Street on VHS recorded off something else, right?
Okay.
And so I have this feeling that this hip hop scene is only for this really secular, isolated silo that I live in, and everybody else out there hates this, you know. What's really interesting too, growing up in a house that we were struggling with, funnily enough, my two uncles worked for Adidas.
Oh,
they
beautiful.
were because they were athletes and high-level athletes. They were sponsored by Adidas, so they worked for Adidas. So when the Adidas sales were on, they would go, "Come down because we're managing the sales."
Okay.
And now I can say it because they no longer work for Adidas. But instead of the $10 shoebox, it was a $2 shoebox. So we actually got home. We came home with all this brand new Adidas gear, which we were like, "Wow, we get to be in this hip hop scene because we get to wear all the Adidas gear."
It's a beautiful thing.
I've noticed you got Adidas jackets. There's an Adidas jacket collection that you talk about on your social media. Talk me through hip hop and Adidas, the three stripe, the original three stripe.
Like, no, it just has to do with sneaker culture.
Yeah.
Because of sneaker culture. And when I say sneaker culture, I mean Adidas, Puma, and Nike.
Yeah.
And so I have those three things that feature heavily in my wardrobe. And so, but the tracksuits, because I have MS, because I'm largely retired, I like the tracksuit. The tracksuit is very comfortable. You get a tracksuit that works on you, you buy multiples. So I have like 6 variations of the same tracksuit. I'm not ashamed to say it.
Oh, it's gold. My parents, same thing from the Adidas sales, and it would have been 88. They got a gold. It was a yellow orangey tracksuit with deep red maroon stripes and Adidas logo, a sky blue with a navy blue. They were two, but they bought 2 pairs of each. My mum's 70, I should know this, 76 or 77. She still wears it.
Oh, did she buy a pair to stock, a pair to rock?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
I
pretty
often
much.
buy 2 pairs of
Pretty
things
much.
for that. You see, when I was first in hospital with the MS, I was in a hospital and there were largely 70-year-olds, and they were all wearing matching tracksuits. And I looked at them and I thought, you are rocking that well. You are looking good. And I thought, I can now legitimately wear a full tracksuit.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I embraced it.
Let's talk about your skate culture. Let's talk about the skate fashion. But the skate culture, like the skating, when did it start for you? At what age were you like, I like this skateboard thing?
To be honest, probably Back to the Future.
Wow.
Because that mainstream sort of thing, all the kids in the neighbourhood got into skateboarding and I bought a skateboard. And while other kids moved on, I never moved on.
Yeah.
I loved skateboarding and I was kind of good at it. And so I sort of progressed. And I didn't like football. I didn't like soccer. I didn't like rugby. But I like these individual sort of things. And so I love skateboarding. I still love skateboarding to these days. I watch, a lot of videos and I still follow the culture a lot.
Yeah.
And I think it was a great way to grow up because you find an instant connection with people. And yeah, I think it's great.
What was one of the common things you found with skaters in the area? Was there a common element?
I don't know, but if you were skating in your driveway and a skateboarder rode past, you would have an instant connection and you would hook up and you would skate together.
Yeah.
And it was great. If a neighbourhood kid had a ramp, that neighbourhood kid was the most popular kid
Yes.
in town. And so, and when we got local bowls, when we got the Elswick Bowl, that started this massive influx of people to the area.
I remember I was in Ringwood and there was a bike bowl in Ringwood and the bottom of this bowl was smashed up and the concrete was bad, but everybody travelled from everywhere because it was the only thing that was available in the area to ride.
Yeah, Ringwood was a death bowl back
Yes,
in the day.
yes.
We had terrible ones in Geelong as well, in Corio,
Yeah.
this shovel bowl that would just peel your skin off. But I think it's incredible, and it's before the Olympics, but skateboarding has gotten so mainstream. It wasn't
Yeah.
mainstream when I was skateboarding. It was sort of the outlier sport. But now that, you train, you go to the Olympics, we're encouraging people. It's interesting because the things I was into, graffiti and skateboarding, they've gotten so mainstream because graffiti, we have tours of
Yeah.
that in the alleys in the city, and the skateboarding, we have camps, skate camps, and it's just brilliant.
Imagine a world back then where there was an element of opportunity to go. You can go to the Olympic skateboarding, or even outside of the competitive nature of the Olympic epitome, you can earn a career just skating.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
They make good money now.
Big
The
money.
sponsorship is massive.
Yeah.
But when I was skateboarding, no one ever said they were training.
Yeah,
You just skated with your friends. It was just what we did.
Well, this is the thing, right? When you look at skaters now and they compete in the Olympics and they compete at high level, I'm like, what training do you do outside this? And I intellectually know that there is an element of strength and conditioning that they may need to do and coordinate it. But wouldn't you just be like, I'm just taking the board out, I'm just going to skate?
Exactly. I think because it does have such a money level now that they do have conditioning coaches and they have all that infrastructure and the support going on. But it's sad. It's sad because it was good when I was growing up. It was just kids being kids.
Yeah. Do you remember your first skateboard? Or what's your ultimate skateboard?
My ultimate skateboard is, I remember my first skateboard, which was a fat skateboard from Kmart or something that I ended up cutting a fishtail in.
Oh,
because you had to sort of do things to prove that you're into it with my parents before they would invest in your hobby. Like you had to show true dedication.
Yeah.
So I've had at least 40, 50 skateboards. Like there's still a good 10 in this house.
Nice.
And I don't know, my favourite was a Mark Gonzalez.
Yeah.
That was sort of the most influential skater when I was growing up, and I wanted to be like him. After that Kmart board, when I proved that I was sort of into it, then I got a Veriflex Voodoo.
Yeah, wow.
And that was my last board before I got a Tony Hawk, before I went to America and I bought a proper setup.
Wow.
Because I proved that I was into it, that it wasn't, an overnight thing.
So we've touched on skateboard, we've touched on the hip hop culture, we've touched on, let's talk about family, because I just the way that you, and through RGR, the way you talk about your parents on your social media, the way that you absolutely glorify your parents.
I adore my parents. I never used to.
Yeah.
But because I got diagnosed with MS and life sort of changed, I became heavily reliant on them again.
Yeah.
And I thought they would have ran a mile, and they had a right to run a mile. They were 60 by the time I was diagnosed.
Yeah.
But they so supported me so much that they never let me fall.
Yeah.
And so, my father is a great guy. My mother is an amazing woman. They're very nurturing. They're very empathetic. And I have nothing bad to say about them.
Are you sure?
I wish they would live forever.
Yeah.
Actually, my mum promised me a snake when I was 10.
Well.
She never gave me that snake.
Well, I tell you what, Darren, you turned 50 yesterday.
I know. I deserve that snake.
What sort of snake would you, if you had a snake now, what sort of snake do you think you'd like?
To be honest, I have a pack of killer pythons in the pantry, and I'm probably happiest with those.
Just the red killer python will do, or yellow killer python will do.
And I sponsored the slaty grey snake at the Melbourne Zoo, which costs $50 a year. So I think it was just a couple of mice and a squirt of water every now and then. But that was my mum's get out of jail thing for not buying me a snake.
I tell you what, I've met lots of people. I've met so many people, but you are so genuine. You are so kind from the Darren that I know.
Oh, you see the good part. You see the good part. And RGR, let's be honest, that's a snippet of Daz.
Yeah.
Like, I can be charismatic for half an hour.
Yeah. What's the, obviously, there's a moment, I ask everybody this, what's the moment in time for you that one changed something, or the one pinnacle moment that you're like, hey, there needs to be a shift in something here?
Oh, when I was 40, when I got diagnosed with MS, because I was married at the time
Yeah.
and I had a career, and overnight, like I split from my wife, I split from my career, and I was suddenly diagnosed with MS. And
Wow.
so that was you got to do something, Darren. You've got to figure it out. And that's why I love my parents so much, because they helped me figure it out. You know,
Yeah.
they gave me that chance. They helped me out with paying off my mortgage and did things that I wasn't able to do at the time.
Yeah.
But that was the yeah.
The diagnosis, how did it come about?
Look, I got you. They were testing for a year or two because they don't diagnose MS straight away. You actually have to have 2 or 3 attacks before they'll legitimately diagnose it. But I sort of knew. I'd already spent 6 weeks in hospital a couple of times, and so I sort of knew what they were playing with, but no one would say it to me.
Yeah.
And at one stage, I thought it was just that I'd turned 40, I'd done nothing but eat pizza, and I was dramatically unfit.
Yeah.
And so I went through a stage where I tried to exercise myself out of the predicament. And when doing that, I started doing sit-ups on the carpet over there, and I didn't know what was going on. I ended up ripping a hole in my back. And when I went to hospital, they needed to stitch up that back. I needed to get a plastic surgeon to sort of
Wow.
attend to it. And the plastic surgeon, when he came to check on his handicap, on his handiwork, came in with a clipboard and he goes, "Okay, so you've got MS."
Oh, wow.
And that was the first. And it was actually kind of tragic because he knew straight away by my expression that
Yep.
no one had told me that. And he was trying to backpedal a little bit. But anyway, that's how I found out. They were the first words that
Yep.
someone actually said, "You've got MS."
So you're going through this, you've got that information, like you said, you've separated from your wife, you're going through this whole journey of
Yeah.
this, and then you just get whacked with this.
Well, my life was my wife, my work, and my health.
Yeah.
Like my health allowed me to
Yeah.
do work 12 hours a day and to DJ
Yeah.
at odd hours. So to have those 3 things taken away
Yeah.
in one fell swoop was tragic.
Yeah.
It was life-changing.
Yeah. People talk about the grief of lots of different things,
Yeah.
and the grief of losing the ability to do the things that you loved.
Absolutely.
In that. How did you cope with it? Like, how do you, what's the
Mainly
next-
through denial.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, I believe that I will get a little bit better and
Yeah.
I'll be able to retain some ability. Like it was tragic to not be able to ride a skateboard.
Yeah.
It was tragic to not be able to stand up and DJ for long periods.
Yeah.
But I came to terms with it.
What's the work that you do continuously now to assist you with that?
Well, I see a psychologist
Yeah.
that I see every week, and
Yeah.
it was mainly because I didn't want to complain to my friends. I didn't want to complain to my parents. I didn't want to be that sort of walking moan.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I try and offload a lot of the mental anguish
Yep.
on my psychologist, but also I just try and spend some time in the sun. I try and have a bit of gratitude. I try and talk to people.
Yeah,
Connection helps me so much
Yeah.
because I can stay in this house for long periods of time and fall into a big heap. But all I got to do is talk to a couple of people, drink a couple of lattes, and I'm all right again.
Yeah, wow. And this is that thing of like you say, connection. Every person that I've spoken to talks about connection. It's important
huge.
that we have connection with people.
Absolutely.
Let's look at this connection of this face-to-face component, and then this online connection that you have as well. And our worlds are now really deeply influenced by online connection. And I see it through lots of schools that I speak to. These students just don't know how to engage face-to-face because they can't pick up on the cues.
Yeah.
So that like you said, that element of it is so important to just the well-being of people.
I find with online, you can't really see tonality. You can't
Not at
see
all.
if someone's being sarcastic.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of stuff gets misread
Yeah.
and gets misconstrued.
It's interesting because when I talk at schools, I'm like, the only way that I can tell that you're angry is through capital letters
Yeah,
or
exactly.
an emoji.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and then I've got to make an assumption. Are you being loud? Is there an exclamation here? What is that? It's one of 5 different things. you inspire many people. You inspire many people.
Thank you, Al.
Yeah, you inspire me, and I just every time we'd finish the show or the show would be finished, Kylie and I would just sit there and go, "How inspiring you are!" And it's not just because of the MS and the journey that you're going through, but just as a kind person, you are so kind. You know, you are genuine, and it's genuine too. You know, in that piece. I've got I reached out without asking you, and I've asked a couple of people a few questions about you.
Oh, wow.
Matt Whelan.
Oh, my
Matt
best
Whelan.
friend.
Yeah.
My best friend, who forgot it was my birthday. I just got 2 messages apologising from Matt for not saying happy birthday yesterday.
Oh wow!
I'm not going to let him off the hook, though.
Yeah, let him know, because it's now going to this. There might be only one person listening to this show, and it may be just Matt, or there may be hundreds, or hopefully thousands, or all the rest. Matt was saying here that so Dee's an amazing person who I am grateful to have grown up with. The only days amazing. One memory was going to the first rave ever in the early mid 90s.
I don't think we can tell that story,
No,
Al.
no. What's the PG version of that story that could possibly be, or is it just left at that's the first rave that you went to?
I could tell a story without the debauchery, but it might not be as interesting.
That's fine. We'll allow people to fill in the gaps where they believe the gaps may need to be filled.
This was the first rave that we ever went to. It was held at a Masonic Hall in Garden Vale. So it was an odd location, and we went there and we did the rave things that rave people do, and it was glorious. But the adventure came from our walk home, because I was living in Carlisle Street in the midst of all the debauchery.
Yeah.
And we decided to walk home from Garden Vale.
Oh, wow.
And we met street people, and they were fascinating, they were lovely, they were horrible, but it was one of those adventurous nights.
Did you, coming that way from where you're going from Garden Vale, did you walk past the Greyhound Hotel to get back
No,
to
because
Carlisle?
we walked the train line.
Oh, wow.
I used to DJ at the Greyhound Hotel.
Wow. What was the name of the girl that used to work on the door? There was a girl, yeah, and she was the door person there, and she just, yeah. I having worked in St Kilda myself for many years, I always just remember that was that component as well. What you see introduced into this rave scene?
Yeah, because I had friends who were rave DJs, but before I became a DJ, I was hanging out with all these rave DJs who were the pioneers of the scene in Melbourne.
Yeah.
And they were people who I went to school with. And so I was heavily influenced by them, and the whole scene, it was sort of new for everyone at that stage.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be involved in something that was new and was youth culture.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would go to them.
How did the DJing start?
The DJing started because I was living with all these DJs, but they were techno DJs.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't really, they were barely moving the crossfader. But I also had hip-hop friends who were scratch DJs, and that I could get into.
Yeah.
And I had friends who'd started record stores, and Brett in the other room started a record store. But so I just had access to all the music and access to people with skills, and I used to learn off them. And it was a great way to grow up. I used to spend 4 hours on the decks every day.
Wow. And then we were talking earlier about, music now is so attainable. You click a link and you download it and it's there. Back then, you had to go to a store to try and find the records that you wanted.
We used to go to the Dandenong Dixons because there was so much heroin in Dandenong. all the hip hop dudes would sell their records to the Dandenong Dixon recyclers.
Wow.
And so we would go there and buy their old tunes.
Wow. And then would that have been the same for Warren's?
Yeah,
Or
pretty much.
similar-ish?
Because St Kilda, back in
then,
those days, yeah.
Tell us about Warren's Records.
Warren's Record Paradise, this was a shop in Chapel Street, St Kilda, that was around for a good 30 or 40 years. But it was run by this curmudgeonly old guy who really didn't like customers. So unless you were buying a rare John Farnham 12-inch, he really didn't want to know you. And we would go there and just sort through crates for hours at a time, and he just thought we were there to steal stuff. But it was a great thing. It was a great place.
You look at that element of, the culture of it, going to a place to grab some records, into DJing. Gone are the days, and we talk about it now. We talked about earlier about a DJ turning up with their laptop, whereas before you had to carry the crates.
Straight away.
Yeah.
And they were heavy, those crates.
How was your scratching skills? Did you scratch?
Yeah, my scratching skills were on point.
Yeah.
I used to be quite proficient.
Yeah.
I'm reluctant to brag about it too much because I have no skills anymore.
Brag about it. Brag about it, because it's a skill that I tried very young, and then I got in a lot of trouble for wrecking my mum's Christmas carols records on just the normal. Yeah,
You can't use the belt drive. You will ruin that. I did that to my parents' Kenwood 10-in-1 stereo growing up because I just wanted to do it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. I mean, it's a skill to learn, right? Like you think about DJs now, and because everything's so attainable, everything's pre-mixed, everything's that element of it, that you're not learning how to combine two songs into one or overlay three into one.
Like when we were learning to DJ, you had to learn music. You had to learn 4/4 and timing and bars and when you could mix something in and when you had to bail out. Like felt like there was a lot more of an art to it. It feels like it's more press a button these days.
Yeah.
Which is fine if the music is good and you're playing something that I want to listen to and want to dance to.
Yeah. But I think that's an element now of, and they went through a phase, and I sort of mentioned to you earlier, where everybody was getting the DJ apps, and then they'll overlaying 3 or 4 songs in a space of 3 minutes.
Yeah,
And you're like, let the music play.
Yeah.
And then do your cross mix into the next one. So it's so transitional that people are like, oh, I know this, I like this, and let that song play.
You listen to the good DJs and they know keys.
Yeah.
So they'll mix from a song to another song and it will be seamless and it'll be an amazing transition.
Yeah.
But they're few and far between these days.
Yeah. Message from Katie Legal, which we spoke about a little bit earlier as well. She absolutely loves you for the work that you did when you worked together. But not only that, the volunteer work that you did for One Girl.
Yeah. Well, you've got to keep the karma bank clean.
Yeah.
And that means if someone asks me to do something for a good cause, I will do that straight away. So I did write some ads for Katie for One Girl.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened to them in the end, but hopefully they did well. And she sent me a lovely note and gave me a lovely frame thing with one of the people that they were helping.
Yeah.
She's got a good soul.
Totally. And one of these things that she's putting here, witty, intelligent, insightful, and importantly, exactly on brief.
Ooh.
Like, how do you do that with creativity and knowing that you have a client that wants something else, and you've got to try and match this cog that sometimes completely misses the mark?
Look, a lot of the time I just do creative indulgence. So I'm happy that Katie liked the work that I did.
Yeah.
I do the work that I want to see being made. And usually the work that I want to see being made is the best work, is going to have the most impact.
How do you approach a client that you're going, no, this is, or was there a stage where you're like, no, this is the work. This is the work now. This is what it is.
I've never been in a position.
Wow.
So I've always been the guy who had to compromise. I had never had the power to push back.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I've been trusted enough that I had sort of carte blanche, but I've always sort of had someone pulling me back.
And if there was something you could do now without restriction at all, what would that look like for you?
Man, I don't know. Sneaker design?
Yeah.
Probably something like that.
Yeah.
Like I noticed that Nike a few years ago started making these accessible sneakers for people who couldn't bend down to put up do with their shoes.
Yeah.
And they did some incredible things. And I would have loved to have been on that design team.
Yeah.
Because I could have made them better.
Yeah.
Because they're all right, but there's a few. They could be better.
Yeah. Wow. So that, if you had the dream job, would that be the dream job?
I think so, but that's only because you put me on the spot.
Yeah.
No, I'd like to be a writer, a proper writer.
Yeah.
I'd like to write big books.
Yeah.
I'd like to write love stories.
Yeah.
I'd like to write adventure stories. I'd like to write.
What's stopping you?
Nothing.
Because I say this, you are one of the most intelligent people that I know, and I do know more than 2 people. So the base is broad. But there's this thing that I see in you that you're just scratching the surface of whatever this looks like.
You know, writing a book is hard.
Yeah.
Because people often encourage me to write more and to write a book. And it's not like I haven't tried.
Yeah.
But it's hard. It's hard work.
There's a few things that I want to work on that I want to invite you to be a part of. When I say invite you to be a part of, I believe I'll do things where I know that I'm capable of.
Yep.
And then there's things that I'm not capable of. And this, I've been working through this with my own psychologist as well, of going, you know what, let go and let somebody else who's better at that do that.
100%.
Where I'm like, no, I think I can do this. I can feel, because the judgment is mine. Yeah. There's only 2 people in my life that I go, this project can only be bettered by somebody else, and you're one of them. And it's for some stuff that I'm looking at, and I don't even know what the big picture looks like, but I'm like, if I was to do this, I'd go to Daz and go, Daz, make this better. Like, make this, whatever it is. Or even, it's not even, can you take this and create it? Can you take this and better it? It's, here's a gap, just do your thing.
I would love to have a look at whatever you want me to have a look at.
Yeah.
You know, I enjoy doing this sort of stuff.
You went back, I'm going to go back to when somebody asks you to do something, you know, you're saying keep the karma clean.
Yeah.
You know, what's that? What's that?
It just means, you know, we've all done bad things in our life.
Yeah.
Let's do enough good things to sort of balance them out.
Yeah.
So that's all I mean. I say keep the karma clock clean.
Yeah.
And it just means put more good in the world.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
What's something around the world? What's something of the world that you see now that you're like, yeah, this is not good? I mean, apart from
social media.
Yeah.
I think social media is both the best thing and the worst thing in the world.
Why is that?
Because I see what it does to young girls' body image, and I think that's absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
I have relatives who have suffered from it and who have had eating disorders, and it's mainly due to social media and the information that they're consuming. So, you know.
I mean, do you see that as because you have this creative mind, my assumption is that you do a bit of reading? I make an assumption?
I do.
So you have this element where the information coming in is one-dimensional, rather than all these components that's data that's collected that confuses the mind in that space. Is that something that you think that we need to get better at, of just slowing it right down? I mean, there's social media inputs, but how fast do you think our brains are working at the moment with it?
Look, I think, you know, I enjoyed just having a library to go to rather than the internet, because I had Brighton Library, which was great. I had my school library, which was great. And I didn't have a billion opinions about a subject. I had the expert who put a book together.
Yeah, and not just a overnight one that you publicise, and an actual book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think we need to devolve a little bit. Let's get back to libraries. Let's try and thin out this information.
Yeah. You know, it's that thing that, once again, some words that for me confuse my brain completely. Hip-hop, skate culture, graffiti, Brighton Library.
Yeah, they all go together though, Al.
Yeah,
like it's a weird mix, but they do go together.
Totally.
Brighton Library, I loved it. Growing up, that was my local library, and I loved animals, and they had all great animal books and all that. And they had the Dewey Decimal System and microfiche, because it was way back in the 80s.
Yeah.
And it was glorious. I thought the library was a wonderland.
Yeah, wow.
Libraries, bookstores, and record stores I used to get lost in, and I used to love them. I still do. I'd
love to do something with you along the lines of that. You know, you did this footage on skate culture. Yeah. Which was on, what was that on? Remind me. We'll put the link on the thing.
It's on YouTube.
Yeah.
It was done by a mob called Renew St Kilda, which was tasked with trying to revitalise Fitzroy Street after the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so they asked me about the origin of Elwood Bowl. So I did a 3-minute film about the origin of Elwood Bowl. And, you know, it was a bit of fun. It was good. It was good.
Imagine doing something like that for libraries. I know it doesn't sound, it's a bit, it doesn't
My
connect.
knowledge of skateboarding is far greater than my knowledge of libraries.
But even that piece of if it's a place of, what is it? A library is a place of what for you?
Well, it's a place of refuge. It's a place where you can go where you're not obligated to spend money.
Yeah.
Which I think is brilliant. How many places in society can you just go and hang out and not be obliged to spend money? And I think, you know, we need more of those spaces.
You just blow my mind. You just blow my mind. Like as soon as you started saying that, my head started going to school holidays are coming up, and this is because
Take them to the library. Take them to the library.
100%, because it's like all this entertainment. Got to do this. Got to do that. Take them to the library.
Yeah.
Take them to the gallery. Take them to because there's free components to what that looks like. I mean, we take them to the parks and all that sort of stuff for a bit of entertainment. But there's this element that we miss by putting them in front of a device or putting them in front of a screen.
I have a friend who reads stories at the library, St Kilda Library.
Oh, yeah.
And in front of kids, like there's all 10-year-olds, and she
Yes.
does the story time there. And she sometimes puts it on Facebook and all that. It's the most charming, beautiful thing. All these kids sitting around and just a beautiful atmosphere.
There's a moment in my life that changed my life. And one of that was I was just made redundant from my work, the job that I had. I took my daughter to the library for the reading session. And we went to sit down and I went straight for my pockets and I'd left my phone at home.
Beautiful.
And I worked out that this is the first time in, I think I calculated back 7 years that I didn't have my phone on me. So we sit down, the person comes out and they start to read the book. My daughter looks up, looks at me with a bit of anxiety or, I'm not sure where to go. So I point to sit down.
Yep.
And as she goes there, she looks back and I'm like nodding, goes a point, I'm like nodding. The book starts, as they're reading, she looks back and I nod. I counted 17 times that my child looked at me, and the journey from, Daddy, I'm not sure what I'm doing here, all the way through to, hey, have a look at this, I'm reading a book.
Positive reinforcement.
And I would have missed that if I had my phone with me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I sat there and I was like, this is engagement, the stuff that you were talking about. This is the engagement, acknowledgement of people.
I don't like how contactable we are in 2023. I remember a time without a mobile phone, without a pager, without any of that, where we could just ride our bikes and not be incommunicado for 8 hours.
And that was brilliant. Like even you saying that now, goosebumps again, because there was an element of going, I'll meet you at 5 o'clock, but it's now 3 o'clock. So for 2 hours, I'm just going to do, and then my only thing is to get there at 5. And if you're there, you're there. If you're not there, I'm like, they must have had something on, so I'll just scoot off and do something else. The time constraints around these 3 or 4 things, but now it's just this bombardment of what that is. I'm going to finish off with this, Daz.
Hit me with it.
Oh, not that one.
Oh, my bad.
No, that's all right. I put the volume up and I heard that and I was like, is that me?
I don't know who that is. We're in an age where we don't answer phone calls that we don't know.
Well, how funny is that? Like imagine we use that theory on the landline.
You'd never answer it. You'd never answer it.
That's what I mean. Like you use the theory now and go, I don't know who that is, so I'm not going to answer the phone.
Oh, the landline. We had 2 in our house, and I was at the age where you would talk to your friend for 3 hours. And my mum had strict rules.
Yeah.
And she wanted to use the phone as well.
Yeah.
So the phone was a labyrinth back in the day. Yeah, I could only move. We had a long cord, actually. I could get a good 12 foot away from the base.
Yes, yeah. But even still, you could only get 12 foot from the base.
Yeah.
But
I was lucky enough that allowed me to get into my room and close the door. So the cord was underneath the door, but I had the semblance of privacy.
Yeah. What's something from the 80s and 90s do you think that we don't have now that we've got to bring back? Well, that's my thing for. That's all right.
That's all right.
Yeah. What's something from the 80s and 90s that we don't have now that doesn't exist that you think that we should have back?
Knight Rider?
Yes. Oh my gosh.
I like Knight Rider. I miss the 7:30 to 8:30 show.
Yeah.
Because we don't have that anymore. We had the A-Team, we had Knight Rider, we had all these shows that occupied that 7:30 to 8:30 time slot. And they were built for kids, and I miss that.
And there's that piece too of where there were the 3 channels, and one would have something on, but that on one channel, so it's the anticipation of waiting for that to come and go, this is what we roll into. And if you miss it, you try and find it from somebody else, or what happened on the night before, or if you're lucky enough to have it recorded, but it wasn't so there in front
TV
of
was
us.
a lot more communal because, as you said, we only had 3 channels, and if there was something good on, everyone watched the same thing.
Yeah.
So we all got to discuss it the next day, what happened in The Simpsons,
Yeah.
whatever it was that we were into.
Yeah. It's crazy. I'm just going to play through this clip from somebody that we both know.
Darren Winter, what an absolute champion. Him, and us, we carried a big community, but also ourselves through a really tough time for a lot of people and ourselves. And Darren is one of these absolute rare gems that loves putting other people above himself. An absolute jet of a person. I'm looking forward to seeing what you guys talk about.
Well, he almost sounded sincere.
Well, the thing is, he says he's looking forward to hearing what we talk about. What he doesn't know is that we're going to be talking about Troy.
Straight away.
Yeah.
Straight away. That was an awesome time doing the RGR. Like, I was happy that that Troy
Yep.
came up with that idea and put it together.
Yeah.
Because it gave us all something to do, and it really filled in a gap.
Definitely. And we talk about that human interaction.
It's the connection.
Yeah, it gave you a connection outside of your own space, and the element of having some new people pop up and different components like that as well. So, thank you so much for your time, Daz. Like I said, brother, this is just
Thank you for having me out. It's been a pleasure. Life was a bit easier back then, wasn't it? Or are we just thinking that?
Oh, good question. There's an element of social media that makes it easier.
Yep.
But then there's also an element of things are more accessible on a positive note now than they were back then as well.
This is true.
So have we overcomplicated it? I think there's a gateway of emotion that we've opened up as well that we should never close. But I think life may have been easier in the 80s and 90s because we didn't have this gateway that was open.
No, dudes are a lot more emotional in 2020 than they were in 1980.
100%. 100%.
Fathers didn't hug in 1980.
Exactly.
They're really keen to hug in 2020, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing to all you dads.
I think one thing that we need to do as a society is accept that the generational space is a generational space.
Absolutely. Because my dad went to Vietnam. Like, he wasn't in a hugging mood when he came back.
Yeah.
And I respect that. I respect that a lot.
I'd love this to be session one with Daz, and we work into other ones like that.
That's all good. As I said, happy to be part.
Yeah, fantastic. Darren Winter, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you, Al.
Summer Sessions is proudly brought to you by the Palace Hotel, 505 City Road, South Melbourne, where your dogs are welcome too. First Nations owned with Indigenous ingredients. Order your black brews, tea or coffee online now. Local Rules Cafe, Garden City, where genuine hospitality begins. Mahina Wellbeing Programs, where understanding people matters most. And this is another Light 2 production. Woo!